to be alive in this land of ours. Good to drive in this land of ours.
Hello, Canadian hockey fans in the United States.
Montreal Canadiens defeat Philadelphia. Right on about the shoot. They score! Lorac! And the Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
That is it. The Montreal Canadiens win 4-1, and the Canadiens win their third Stanley Cup in a row. The game is over. The Montreal Canadiens have won the Stanley Cup for the fourth consecutive time, and for the 22nd time in their history.
If it's 7 o'clock Eastern time on a Thursday night, it's Hockey Time Machine. Good evening, everybody. I'm Steve Paikin, and on behalf of Paul and Laura and Glenn, we are happy to welcome you to what is plain and simple, the greatest collection of hockey talent our show has ever seen. And we have done 50 shows. This one is number 50. We have never had 6 Hall of Famers on all at once, let alone all from one team. The Montreal Canadiens of the 1970s won 6 Stanley Cups in 71 and 73. And then, of course, those 4 in a row, 76, 77, 78, and 79. Representing that team, we are very pleased to welcome their coach, William Scott Bowman. Scotty's name is on the Stanley Cup 14 times. He is the winningest coach of all time, 1,471 victories in the regular season and playoffs. He was elected to the Hall of Fame in 1991. Their goaltender, Ken Dryden, Conn Smythe Trophy winner, Calder Trophy winner, 5 Vezina trophies, 6 Stanley Cups, elected to the Hall of Fame in 1983. On defense, Serge Savard, Conn Smythe Trophy winner, Bill Masterton Trophy winner, 8 Stanley Cups, team captain, elected to the Hall of Fame in 1986. Also on defense, Larry Robinson, James Norris Trophy winner, Conn Smythe Trophy winner, 6-time Stanley Cup champion as a player, 3 more as a coach, elected to the Hall of Fame in 1998. At forward, Yvon Cormier, Conn Smythe Trophy winner, 10-time Stanley Cup champion, team captain, elected to the Hall of Fame in 1982. And also at forward, Steve Shutt, top goal scorer in the NHL in the 76-77 season with 60 goals, 5-time Stanley Cup champion, elected to the Hall of Fame in 1993. Gentlemen, we are really grateful that you agreed to join us tonight for what I think is going to be a very special show. Now, I have to tell you candidly, I'm not sure what the protocol is here in terms of who gets the first question because, you know, Scotty was the coach and presumably he was in charge back in the day, so maybe it should be him, or maybe it should be one of the team captains, or maybe the goalie who has written so thoughtfully about hockey in so many books over the years, or maybe the big bird who's had so much success as a player and a coach. But I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to start with Steve Shutt, who's had to listen to these other guys so often over the years. And I'm hoping, Steve, I notice, is having a little technical trouble getting in here, and I hope, there he is again. Okay, Steve Shutt, we're going to start with you. And I just want to know, for starters, what was the best thing about playing for the Montreal Canadiens in the 1970s?
I guess the thing would be all the players. You know, this was the year I really had a team. But he played like a team. Everybody.
Somebody wants to get in on the action there with you. Is Steve Shutt frozen, everybody? What's the problem here?
That's what it looks like.
Okay. All right. Let's see if we can get Steve back in.
It's odd for Steve to be frozen.
That's what happened when you don't start by the coach.
Okay, Larry, why don't you pick up the story? What was the best thing about playing for the Habs in the 70s?
Well, I think what Steve was referring to is that we didn't really think of ourselves as a team. We were more like a family. We did things together. We cared for each other. We played for each other, and most of all, we all had the same mindset, and that is we all hated to lose, and we only wanted to win. So when you have that mindset, I mean, that's a step in the right direction. And I think we had some pretty good talent as well. And whenever we made a mistake, the big fellow there, Kenny, was there to close the door for us. So it was a good combination. It was a team that could play in any situation, any type of game. If you wanted a wide open game, we could do it that way. If you wanted to play it tough, we could do it that way. So I think just the chemistry that we had and the personnel that we had, it just fit the way the game was played at that time.
Let's get the captains into this. Serge Savard, the best thing about playing for the Habs in the 70s?
Well, we were, I graduated, was no draft when I came, and I played 2 years with Scotty in the junior Canadiens. And in the Montreal Canadian organization, we were taught at the early stage that a goals against is just as important as a goals for. And I don't think we gave breakaway like they do now. And so everybody really played, even if you're Guy Lafleur or Steve Shutt, you had to come back and you had to do your own share, and we became a team, and we became a family. When I looked at you have 6 guys who are all Hall of Fame, and we were fortunate enough to be all together on the same team, and knowing very well that with the salary cap today, you could not have a team like that in the future. So we were very blessed.
Yvon Cormier, how about you?
Well, I think, I cannot say about it. We're a family, and we hate to lose. I even played backgammon with my wife, and I hate to lose. She's always the winner, and I hate that. And what I'm missing the most, it's the guys. And when I retire, it took me like a couple of years before I could not believe it. I retired for my back surgery. And we had so much fun, and we really respect the other team. That's what Larry said. We can play tough. We can play what game they want to play. We're going to play it, and we stayed together for quite a while. So I think that's why we became a family, and we see the kid grow up, and I'm still mixed the guys.
Ken Dryden, how about you?
Well, I think everybody has said it, but it's and you can hear it in people's voices and what they say. I mean, how would you like to be surrounded by a group like this? To have in front of you defensemen like Serge and Larry and Yvan and Steve, the way they could score, and Scotty always offering the right message behind the bench. I mean, when you're on a team, you are completely in everybody else's hands, and you got to trust those hands. And it's really rare that you are surrounded by people that are like the people that you have on the screen tonight. I mean, it was just a total treat to be around everybody.
Steve Shutt, let's try you again. We had a little technical trouble getting you in the first time. Have we got you back yet? I think Steve's having bandwidth problems wherever he is tonight. Okay, Coach, you get to go next. You had so much talent on this team, no doubt some strong personalities too. What was the key to coaching them?
Well, we had a very unselfish team, like the players had said, we could play any style. And, you know, you got the Hall of Fame players on the ice here, and some had been there in the 60s. It's always been something in Montreal, passing the torch down, and which has been very impossible in the last couple of decades. But before I start, I have to tell you that Serge got shortchanged earlier on because he has 2 other cups. Don't forget, he was the manager. They don't talk about the managers. And I had a good one in Sam Pollock. There's no question about that. So I think on our team, we could, I mean, the players were so unselfish that if we needed to kill penalties or we needed to shadow a certain line, you know, the Hall of Fame players are on the ice and they'll tell you the same thing here. But when you look at our team, through the most part, you know, fellas like Doug Jarvis, Bob Gainey is in the Hall of Fame, and unusual for really good defensive players to ever get in. That's how good he was in his own style. But, you know, fellas like Doug Risebrough, Yvon Lambert, Yvan was there before anybody, but Mario Tremblay, and then you throw, you know, you get Régent Houle, Jimmy Roberts. We could play any. I mean, there's. It's hard to get those teams today. I'm not sure. I think looking at the Montreal team right now, which has been a total surprise to everybody, including people in hockey, and I felt that our team was very similar. That, you know, at the end of the night, yes, our defense, like Serge and Larry, and certainly Guy Lapointe would. It's different now because they play more. But the ice time, I mean, their ice time was more than maybe some defensemen today. But we had a team that could sacrifice. And you know, if I think like Steve will tell you, and Guy Lafleur and Yvan, you know, they were so productive offensively, but you know, they didn't expect to kill penalties in the last minute of the game, or you're shadowing a certain player. I mean, they would be pulling for the players that would go on the ice. So I think as a team, and that's what the Montreal team is. If you look at the changes that they made this summer, they added a lot of experience, and it just shows to me that team is it's not done what our teams did, but it's a carbon copy. It's a team, and it just shows even in the decade now that the teams that only have a couple of players that are superstars, it's tough to win. You get in the playoffs, and you know, even some of the guys on our teams that scored big goals for us during the season, sometimes they didn't do that much scoring. So that's what I thought our team could play the right way at the right time, and accept if you were a scorer, you may not play in the last minute, and if you're a checker, and your team is behind, which we weren't a lot, you're not going to get as much ice time. So it's a team game, but unfortunately today you can't keep all the teams together, and our team was together for the most part. I mean, when I started there in 71, the Stanley Cup team, that team in 1971, and I think Kenny and Yvan would tell you, they were probably the third ranked team in the league, and rightfully so. Boston and New York were really terrific teams during the season. But so when you get into playoffs, that's what our guys could do. They could play by the score, and they could play together.
Anybody who has done a Zoom call at some point over the last 15 months will understand about trying to get bandwidth proper. And I see we're still having difficulty getting Steve Shutt in here. So let me just say a note to Glenn Dreyfus that we're going to go to number 9 now. And Larry Robinson, that means a bit of a focus on you here. Your first season with the Habs was 72-73. You won the Cup. And we're going to show a clip here of a talent that you had that I suspect a lot of people watching us tonight didn't know you had. Glenn, the clip, if you would, please.
Show off.
Oh, tout le club est difficile, mais Philadelphie, puis Boston, puis Islanders. Ça, c'est le club plus difficile, je pense.
Now, we knew you could go coast to coast and score those beautiful goals. I bet a lot of people didn't know that you spoke French. How was it? How important was it to you to speak French as an Anglophone playing for the Canadiens?
Sorry.
And have we lost Larry?
With the goal he scored just now, he doesn't have to speak French.
Here he is coming back in now. This is unfortunately inevitable. Okay, Larry, we've got you back. I just wanted to find out how important was it for you as an Anglophone to be able to speak some French playing for the Canadiens?
I taught him. He was my roommate.
Serge taught me all the words I know, all the bad ones. No, I thought it was you're in Quebec, and a lot of our fans and everything, and a lot of our broadcasts were in French. I grew up near a French family when I was growing up on the farm, so I knew some, and I knew some from school. So I just took it upon myself. Actually, there was like 5 or 6 of us that used to go to one of the colleges in downtown Montreal and take French lessons. But most of the guys that were taking it were so far back that I found it really boring, because a lot of stuff they were taking I already learned in school. So I think for me to take that next step, you just have to tell yourself that you're going to make mistakes, and our guys were great. I'm sure a lot of the stuff that I was saying was like somebody's French trying to speak broken English. So I just kept practicing, and I took it upon myself to learn the language.
Let me follow up with this. Do you recall if there was a moment during your time with the Habs in the 70s where you looked around and said to yourself, I may be playing on the best team ever?
No, I never thought of it that way. I mean, I'm just reverting back to what Kenny and all the guys said, is that, we kind of put pressure on ourselves, to win every time. And we look forward to coming to practice. And it's hasn't been since I retired that, I come up on some of our opponents that we've played against over the years, and they would tell us how, they wanted to come to watch our practices, because some of our practices were better than some of the games, because you'd have Bobby Gainey and his checking line out there against Lafleur and Shutt, and it was a competition and so we drove each other to be better, and it was fun. I mean, the bottom line is that we played hard, but we also took time to enjoy ourselves as well.
Serge, your first season with the Canadiens was 1967-68. You did win a Stanley Cup, and we want to show a clip now of something you did 125 times during your NHL career, perhaps best described by Danny Gallivan. Glenn, if you would.
Back to Savard. Score! You'll see the pass from Robinson go back to Savard, and Savard using the people in front for a screen, let it go on the far side, beat out over the line. There's the lead pass. Here's Jonathan getting a break, going in a goal. Jonathan shoots. Oh! Tremendous save by Savard.
You could score them, but you could stop them as well, apparently. Sarah, at what point did you think, or was there a moment when you thought, I may be playing for the best team ever?
Well, I was thinking about it, because when you have when your first line, you have Guy Lafleur on the right side with the 50 goals, and on the left side you get Steve Shutt with 60, and Lemaire around 40 goals, and when you go on the second line, you had the Mahavlich, and and you lose 8 games during the year. You got to think that this team might be the best team. and it was confirmed in Scotty's book.
I'm going to come back to Scotty later about that. The book he did with Ken Dryden. Yvon Cournoyer, I want to ask you, you joined the Habs in 63-64. You won a cup the next year. You started as a power play specialist, and you talked to Brian McFarland about that on Hockey Night in Canada. Glenn, let's see that.
You know what Clancy says about you? He said, if I was still playing hockey and that little fella hung around my net, I'd put the wood right to him. What's your comment on that?
Well, they already get a penalty. I think we're going to have another penalty, so we're going to play 5 against 3.
And you get another goal. Yeah. Thanks very much, Yvon.
Okay.
How old is that guy there, Yvon?
I was very young.
No kidding.
But you know, I told my wife the other day, I said, with the team we have right now, if we score on the power play, we're going to win, especially in the series. And that's what we're doing right now. We have a chance to score in the series. And I remember when Blake put me on the power play only, that's why I did play much on the first few years. He hated goals against, like Shutt said. Or Ken, you know, if you win the Vizina Trophy, you're going to finish first and win the Stanley Cup. And I was so worried when I have a goal against. I was looking at what door Blake was the closest to make sure I don't go to that door because I was afraid to win on the bench. But he told me that I was in my head, I like to score goals, but for me, winning was the ultimate. And I never finished minus in my career. Never finished minus in the season.
Wow. Did you ever have a moment where you thought, I'm playing on the best team ever?
Always. I mean, how you cannot have the best team ever, Scotty, when you're losing 11 games in 10 games or 10, 11 games in 2 years. I mean, and it's not just the winning, it's the guys. You know, if you go to work and you're happy, you're going to win and you're going to do well. And that's what we were. We were happy together. And, you know, we have our difficulties sometimes. It's any business going to have it. But if you look at the guys we play with, like I said, I still miss them a lot.
Ken, many people, of course, remember you joining the Canadiens very late in the 1971 season, winning the Cup, winning the Conn Smythe Trophy, and then the following year winning the Calder as the best rookie. Was there a moment during that decade when you thought, I'm playing on the best team ever?
No, I don't think so. And I think it was, when we were playing, up above us in the rafters were all of these numbers of retired players. And so we knew we were on a team where the Rocket had played and Jean Beliveau and Doug Harvey and Jacques Plante and name after name. And I think, those who were the media at the time and also the fans, they saw them as just unbelievable players. And I don't think we ever dared think that we were as good as those players who had played before us. I don't think Guy Lafleur ever thought he was as good as the Rocket. I don't think Larry or Serge ever thought they were as good as Doug Harvey. I know I never thought I was as good as Jacques Plante. I doubt that Scotty ever thought that he was as good as Blake. And I think in a lot of ways what happened is that I mean we just kept playing and being what we were and winning as we were. And for me at least, it was much later that I realized that in fact maybe we were the best ever. And maybe part of it was that we never thought we were, and that we were always we left the other teams behind in the NHL, but I don't know that we ever felt as if we left behind those players from the 1950s that won 5 in a row, and we're always kind of competing against them, and maybe in the end, because of that we were a team that maybe we were the best. And one of the things, and I hadn't thought about this until about a week ago, and and we talk about losing 8 games in one year and 11 in another, I think, or 10 or 12 or whatever it was. I think it was 30 in 3 years. And we hardly lost in the playoffs. But one of the things that I hadn't realized about the playoffs is that you lose occasionally in the playoffs. But in those 4 years that we won in a row, we lost only 3 games in the finals. We lost less than 1 game a year in the finals, supposedly up against the next best team in the league, and we won 16 games and they won 3. And so at the time, no, I didn't sort of dare think about it. But later on, I think that we may well have been.
That's an amazing stat. 16-3 over 4 years. Serge, I should ask you, did you, as Ken suggested, ever look up in the rafters, see Doug Harvey's retired number and think, I wonder if I'm as good as him? Or then maybe get to a point where you said, I am as good as him?
No. I always thought he was my idol with John Beliveau. And because I was playing center and defense when I first came in Montreal at training camp at 15, they say you're too big to play center. So they put me on defense. But for me, Doug Harvey was the best defenseman ever until Bobby Orr arrived, and that's a different time. And then you had other players like Larry, but Doug Harvey, I don't think I ever came close to the talent of those guys.
Well, objectively, that's just not the case, right? You were better than him. That's a fact. Can you accept that?
No, I never thought about that. In his time, Doug Harvey was the best player, the best defenseman. He won the Norris Trophy for 5 or 6 times in a row, and Scotty's a little bit older than us, and he was from Montreal, and I'm sure he didn't miss that many games in Montreal, and he was even after coming back from retirement, you had him in the Stanley Cup Finals in St. Louis in 1968, and he was still a great competitor.
Scotty, can I ask you whether you ever looked up at the rafters or thought about Toe Blake and said, I want to be as good as him. Maybe now I am as good as him?
No, well, I was very fortunate. The two people, Sam Pollock, we know what he did with the Canadiens since 1947 and left in 1978. But the two people that I would pay homage as far as my career was, the first one was Claude Drouel. And if you can go back and look, Claude Drouel, I coached in the junior team in Ottawa. I was coaching along with Sam Pollock, but he was pretty busy. I coached most of the games during the season. Claude was just turning 17 when he lost his eye in a very unfortunate accident in Belleville, Ontario, against a senior team. And so that team, I had a fairly good knowledge of French from school, and living in Verdun, we would have 2/3 of our blocks were English and 1/3 was French, and you played with French and English, and we had on the junior team Claude, and we had a lot of good French players that made the NHL, Jacques Laperriere and Bobby Rousseau and Gerald Tremblay, and none of those people could speak hardly a word of English. I had never spoken French, and I spent 2 years with those players, and I was able to, between those speaking English and me speaking French, and then I got to know Claude very well. And when he lost his eye, Claude would have to go down to Montreal and get checked up, and he stayed with my parents because Claude never felt comfortable at that time going into hotels and everything. He only had the one eye. But Toe Blake, so Claude, the defensemen like Larry and Serge and Guy Lapointe, Jacques Laperriere, Rod Langway, any of the, Bill Nyrup, Pierre Bouchard, the Canadiens' defense through the 70s, I don't think I ever tried to tell, or even I didn't think I knew anything about defense. Claude would take any young player and work with them. And it wasn't a fluke that these players became what they are today. So, and Toe Blake, I was fortunate And we lost 3 years in a row. The first year I lost with St. Louis. Toe Blake was the coach of Canadiens, and nobody knew he was retiring. We lost 4 straight. Some of my junior players like Serge and Jacques Lemaire ended up scoring goals. I think Serge was killing penalties and everything else, short-handed goals. But, after losing that first year to Canadiens, and I had only met him a few times coaching the juniors, but when I was coaching the juniors, I could go and see him every Friday, and he was poring over books about how we're playing the team tomorrow night. And I remember the one year they were playing somebody, and it was Detroit. Had a good regular season, and he was going to find out how can we not. We played 11 times, and Detroit had beaten them 7, and he was showing me all the records that he kept, and I still kept those records, even though the league supplied some. So those two people, Toe Blake, and I never thought about trying to be as successful as Toe Blake. I've always said to everybody that wants to talk about coaching, Toe Blake coached 13 seasons in the NHL, and the Canadiens won 8 times. And then he retired in
6-team NHL, though, Scotty. Only a 6-team NHL.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just saying that's still a record that's impossible to do. And Claude Drouel, he was a wonderful person because he didn't ever want to be a coach, but he was probably the most instrumental player, a person that I had on our staff that could teach hockey, could keep you posted. I mean, I remember one game we went to Kansas City, and this is a quick story, and they were just, that's got to be around 76 or 77, and we hardly ever lost, as you know. And one night we went to Kansas City, and Mario got a major penalty in the first period, and unfortunately we gave up at least 2 or 3 goals, and we got beat that night. But at the end of the first period, we were down in the game, and Claude came down every period, and he looked at me and he said, "What are you doing tonight?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You don't even care who's on the ice. This team." I mean, that's the relationship I had with him. He prompted me. He said, "It doesn't matter." And he said, and he used to refer to Sam a lot. And he said, you don't listen to me sometimes, but listen to Sam. Sam said the poorest team in the league in any sport is going to win 1 game every 4. And Claude said, tonight's the game that's going to be that 1 game. And, he was just a great person. He tried to coach 1 year, but he didn't like it. And I can't say enough about So I wanted to bring his name up with the group, because I don't think any of those players would tell you anything different, how much he meant to each of them, and how much he meant to the Montreal Canadiens. Because I owe my career to the fact that I had fellows like he and Toe Blake to count on, and Toe was a great bench man. He always got the right players on the ice at the right time, and that's what I tried to do.
Well, there was a time when a lot of people thought the Montreal Canadiens were quite a good finesse team, but were they tough enough to win Stanley Cups? And then, Glenn, can we have clip number 18, please? Then Larry Robinson did this. Let's take a look at this. There's Larry Robinson, and there's poor Gary Dornhoefer, and he went into the boards so hard they had to stop the game and fix the boards because he dented the boards. Larry, what was the significance of that hit, do you think?
Well, I don't know if it had a lot of significance at the time, but I know we were down in the series, and then it was one of those hits where he was going at full speed, and I came across, and he didn't even see me. And but when we hit, there's a 2x4 that goes across the boards, and it must have been weak because in a way they had to come out and fix it, but. In later years, I had never seen the replay of that hit until later years. And then anyway, I happened to see Gary Dornhoefer at a game one time, and I asked him about it, and he goes, yeah. He says, that I threw up blood for the next 3 days after that hit. So it was I mean, it was part of my game anyway. I loved giving a big hit, as Serge will know, because I hit him really hard in Calgary once, trying to hit somebody else. But I enjoyed the physical contact as much as I enjoyed scoring a goal. So for me, I think that kind of gave us a little bit of a lift, because the fans went crazy, and especially when they announced that they had to fix the boards, they even went crazier. So, and we've got great fans in Montreal.
Before I hear others on that hit, Serge, maybe you could fill in the blanks about that accidental hit from Larry that you took. What happened to you?
Well, you talking about mine?
Yes, when he hit you.
Larry was coming, with his ass there. He was coming to hit somebody else, and I don't know what happened, but he hit me right in the guts, and I lay down for 5 minutes. I lost my breath, and I felt really bad for 2-3 days. He hit me really hard, and when he hit Gornoffer, you could hear the noise in the whole forum, and everybody that was in the forum can tell you it was a great hit, and it was even a better hit than what the picture that we saw. It was a game changer. We beat Philadelphia in 4 games in 1966, but Philadelphia were a dirty team, and one of the reasons, there's 2 reasons why we beat them. First, we were a better team, but we were also a bigger team. We had, nobody wants to fight Larry Robinson. Larry Robinson has a reach of probably 4 inches longer than anybody else. And we had big guys, Butch Bouchard, and we had big guys on our team.
Yeah, Ken, maybe I could get you to pick up the story, because, of course, the Flyers won those back-to-back cups in the middle 1970s, and many people thought, well, they've changed the game. They've changed the game in such a way that favors, well, let me just call it goon hockey as opposed to skill. And yes, they had some skill players, but they were not known for that. And then here comes Larry Robinson and that hit. What do you think the significance of that hit was?
As Serge said, I think it was had a huge effect. And I mean, it was the hit, but then as Larry describes, it was the fact that the game had to be stopped, and the maintenance guys had to come out onto the ice. And they're the maintenance guys. I think one has a crowbar, another has a hammer, and there are 18,000 people that are watching these guys trying to crowbar the boards, into position, and hammering. With each hammer, you can hear it echoing through the building. And so if anybody for a second missed the hit that Larry put on Gary Dornhofer, or the effect of it, it was just reinforced with every crowbar and with every hammer. I think it was huge. And I mean, what I always was afraid about with the Flyers is that I mean, Larry was so big, so strong, and so tough, and without that in fact he didn't need to show it very often, because everybody knew that he was. And I was afraid that what the Flyers would do would be to decide to just go after Larry and to say, we've got to take this guy down in some way because we hold him in too much respect. We're simply not playing the game that we play best. And I thought Larry had a huge effect, in that series. I mean, in all of those 4 years, but in that series and in that game, as Serge said, I think it was a game changer, and it was a series reinforcer. That lots of things that were happening that were going to move the series in our direction, but with that, it just reinforced everything else, and it was done and gone after that.
Yvon Cournoyer, what did you think of the significance of the hit?
Larry, you didn't hit him hard enough.
He was not a very popular guy.
Yeah.
Like Ken said, everybody said, if you were to lose that series, all the team would get some goons on the team because they already won 2 Stanley Cup before us. And there was no way before the season we went there and we had a big free-for-all. And like Serge said, we have a bigger team than them, and we can play all kind of a game. We have a lot of scorers: Guy Lafleur, Jacques Lemaire, Steve Shutt, and all the guys. And you know, we were. I think I win a lot of Stanley Cup, but that one was a good one for the league, and for our guys too. That was respect you have to have, and it's like our other team. We were afraid to lose. We have to respect the other team, but they did respect us because they thought they were big bullies and they're going to win. But we showed them then all together we can score goals and play tough too.
Scotty, could you talk about that? Because, of course, for the previous 2 seasons, there was a view that you had to beat people up and goon it up in order to win the Stanley Cup. What did that hit, and what did that cup win for you that year suggest otherwise?
Well, that team, 75-76 team, you know, the famous game against the Russians was New Year's Eve at 75, and everybody knows what kind of a game it was. It was a wonderful hockey game, and they were a great team, and again, it ended in a tie. But I think that gave our team so much confidence that you know, when we had to play Philadelphia, they were the team that was going to get in the final. They'd been winning the 74-75, beating good teams. They beat Boston in 75, so it meant a lot to our team, and I think it propelled the team because the following season, you know, in the fall of that year was the Canada Cup. I think 6 or 7 of our players played in that, and that next season, like it started with a game at New Year's Eve, and then the team kept going, and then the next season is the year that we lost only 8 games. We just lost 1 in Montreal, and I think looking back, you know, and the players could also tell you that, you know, when you're coaching or playing in Montreal at that in that decade, even in the 60s, I mean, you know, the team in Montreal that bounced back and they won in 65 and you know, in 60, Toronto won 3 in a row, and then Montreal came and they would have won 5 in a row except for 67. So the next decade, you know, the fans were they knew how good this 3 decades in a row that they won 4 or 5 cups. So when you're in Montreal, the pressure of the fans wanting the team to win, it's not a bad pressure. It's because I know living there, I happen to live there all year round. Some of the guys would go home, but it you know, even I'm sure they went home to Ontario and other places. It's not a very comfortable feeling when you're playing in Montreal those 2-3 decades if you don't win, and so the fans mean so much, and I can even see now when the way I keep coming back to this year's team, but like, you know, it's even without crowd at the Bell Center. I couldn't believe the crowds that the fans they were all, you know, kept away from everything for 2 years, but look at they come back now as the Canadiens have won 2 series. So I think that propelled us for the next three cups in a row, because you know, that was the first of the 4, and it was also the year that we never lost any games right at the following season.
I think it's probably time, and I know he's not a big fan of our doing this, but Mr. Dryden, we're going to force you to look at some of your work from back in the day. Glenn, let's do number 22 here. This started off as a pretty bad giveaway, but it ended up okay for the Montreal Canadiens. Let's roll it. There's the giveaway, and there's the save. Dryden saves, Lapointe picks it up, and there goes the flower. And Ken, I have to ask you, I guess, how many times did that happen? Dryden saves, 20 seconds later, Lafleur puts it in the other end.
Well, Lafleur putting it in the other end happened a lot. Yeah. I mean, the thing about being a goalie in Montreal, is that there are tough saves and there are big saves. And a goalie who plays on a bad team or even a mediocre team, you can make a lot of tough saves. But then what happens is that then you have to make another tough save and another tough save, and nothing much comes of it. I mean, that the puck stays in your end and you make a bunch of tough saves and you still lose 4-2. With Montreal, you knew that if you made a tough save, it could turn into a big save. And the big save is that it might make a difference because we had the kind of players that could make a difference. That Guy could go up the ice and score. That Shutty could find a way of tipping one in or getting a rebound and scoring. That Larry would lead a rush. That Ivan would rocket his way into the open and score. And so all you needed to do was make, the tough save, the occasions that you had it, and you just knew that it could turn into a big save. And that's just perfect for a goalie. I mean, when you can feel as if what you're doing can actually matter and actually make a difference, and the only time it makes a difference is if your team can go up and score, and we could score.
Speaking of Steve Shutt, we are trying to get him back in here, just FYI. He's having real Wi-Fi problems at his place, but we're trying to get him back to join us just to fill everybody in on that.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but Ken, the save you made on Jim Pappen in Chicago in the series? And he thought he's got to go in, and he's got his two hands in the air, and tough luck, Ken Dryden stopped him, and we win the game.
I bet that happened a lot too.
Yeah, that was.
I didn't mention it when I was talking.
That one was fun.
I'm going to mention to the guys. I think Ivan or
I remember in my head for a long time.
Sorry, Scotty, what were you trying to say?
I wanted to know if the guys remembered in the training camp in 1970. I think it was 75. It had to be the year before we played them in the finals, Philly. They came into Montreal, and nobody wanted to ever play them, even in preseason, because they even in preseason, that's all they wanted to do. They came into Montreal one night, and they didn't bring many of their good players. They brought a bunch of guys, and we had our players, and we weren't ready for the kind of game they wanted to play. But I remember after the game, Claude Drouel said to me, and we had planned it. He said, we're crazy. Why didn't we put in all our tough young guys that were trying to make our team? But we're gonna go on their rink tomorrow night, and we did. We went to Philadelphia, and that would be in the training camp of '75, and I don't know if we had it planned before, because we knew what they were gonna do on a Saturday, but we brought every player. We had Pierre Bouchard, Gilles Lupien. We had a guy named Sean Shanahan. We had Glenn Goldup. We had I can't remember how many other guys we had, and it was a big brawl.
Wasn't Chartres there?
Rick Chartres was there, and I don't even know if the game finished, but I know one thing.
No, it didn't.
I was on the bench. And I think Gilles Lupien had Gary Dornhofer. I had met him because I coached in Peterborough. He played in Niagara Falls, and we had an all-star game in junior. But anyways, I think I'm pretty sure it was either Rick Chartres or somebody had him in a headlock, and he was pleading with me to tell him to get this guy off Scotty. I mean, I'm choking. But from that point on, I don't think Philadelphia, we never had a problem. We wanted to play hockey, and we were able to play hockey. They never tried after that. Even in that series in '76, they did not try. I mean, you're in the finals, but I thought that it was a more hockey played series. Very, very. I don't think there was any fighting of any kind or no. I mean, that's what they wanted to do is fight, but we didn't have to even do any fighting. So that was a big thing. That team that we took to Philadelphia, and made sure that we got some guys that can fight too.
We want to go back into our hockey time machine vault here because we have an interview that Dick Irvin did with Larry Robinson talking about the team's two goaltenders at the time. And Glenn, can we run this, please? There's number 24, if you would.
Larry, Scotty's been alternating goaltenders a little more than usual of late. Does it make a difference for a defenseman? Things to watch for playing in front of Kenny as opposed to playing in front of Bunny Lorac?
No, Bunny, I think maybe handles the puck a little better than Kenny, but really, when you've got two goaltenders of their caliber, it doesn't really make that much of a difference.
Now, Ken, I've got to ask whether you knew whether or not Larry Robinson had so little faith in your puck handling skills.
You may want to redo this interview, Larry.
I muted it on purpose.
What I remember Serge about 2 or 3 times a year after I'd have one of those moments where I thought I could handle the puck. And Serge would just say, look, just leave it. And I always thought that if there was somebody who was close to Serge or Larry to get the puck, that I could help them out by shooting it into the corner. And what Serge was saying and what Larry was saying in that interview was just saying, look, if I have even a quarter of a step, I'm big. I have a big body between the puck and that guy. Leave it. Do not try to do anything with it. I didn't learn very fast. I always tried to make the next play. I had never seen that interview, but it was
neither have I.
Yeah, I mean, you were actually very kind, in the way you put it, because I was not good.
Ken, I think you were the best goalie I ever played for.
Yeah, but Larry apparently doesn't think he handled the puck very well.
Well, Larry was right.
I don't mind. He was still winning.
Larry, anything you want to take back there or add?
No. I like I said, I don't remember the interview, and I had my mic muted. So whatever I said, Kenny, I'm sorry.
But really,
But
that's
you
the
weren't
first
very good,
time I
Paul
see
Campbell.
that interview.
Serge, what about it? Was Ken not that good at handling the puck, or was
Me
Bunny
too.
Lorac better?
No, I mean, every goalie, their goal is to score a goal. They try to score a goal in the empty net. That's the goal of a goalie. But Kenny, he was okay. He tried to get the puck around, but sometimes just push it in the corner. And in the corner, the guy was coming 50 miles an hour behind us and hit us. I said, then just leave the puck behind the net. I'd rather pick it up behind the net than being hammered in the corner.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, one of the things, and watching Carey Price now, he is unbelievable in handling the puck.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and it's not the flashy pass, it's not the long pass. I would bet he gives the puck away maybe 5 to 10% of the time. That's about it. He handles it so well, confidently, calmly, right on the stick, right where it needs to be. It's quite I don't think I've ever, there are people that, like Martin Brodeur was a great passer, but I don't think I've seen anybody who is more sure and certain in the way in which he moves the puck than Carey Price.
Imagine, Kenny, if you would have been that good, or the defense would be better.
I'm sorry, Yvan?
If you would have been that good stopping the puck, imagine the defense, how good they would be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But before they changed the rules, Scotty, remember Ed Giacomin used to go up with the puck up to the blue line. Nobody would touch him, because you weren't allowed to touch the goalie, and then they had to change the rules. He was skating with the puck up to the blue line.
We just did see a picture of somebody touching Ken Dryden pretty good. I don't know, Glenn, if we can bring that shot back up, but somebody on the Rangers there, Ken, looks like they're taking you out in the corner. There it is there. What's going on there?
Yeah, that's weird. I don't know. I can't even imagine how that happened.
That's Johnson. I think that's Johnson, right?
Got lost.
Eddie Johnson.
Oh, yeah, Eddie Johnson. Yeah.
Eddie Johnson, yeah.
Well, let me raise a bit of a controversial subject here. And Scotty, you get to sit and listen to everybody else weigh in on this, and then we'll get your view on this. There will be some people who will say there was so much talent on those teams in the 1970s, anybody could have coached them to all those Stanley Cups. Larry Robinson, weigh in on that if you would.
Well, I think I appreciate it more now, having been behind the bench myself. Everybody thinks, oh yeah, sure, it's so easy to coach. Well, unfortunately, I found out it's not that easy to coach. And I think Scotty's strengths were that he knew how to manage the players that he had. And he knew how to put out the right people at the right time. He knew how to push all the right buttons. He kept everybody always guessing. And I think that's what I remember the most, is that you never knew what Scotty was thinking. And maybe that was a good thing, because we did have so much talent. You don't want to, kind of sit there and rest on your laurels. You want to stay sharp, and he kept us sharp. We would come back from a road trip after winning. I mean, my first 4 years in the league, we never lost a game on the West Coast, and yet we would come back, and the first practice back, we would just skate and work hard in the practice, and then the next day we would have nothing. And we always found that strange as players, but as a coach, you look at what happens now. Any team that goes on a lengthy road trip, I'd say, I don't know the exact percentages, but I think it's over 80% of the teams, unless the other team is really bad, but most of the time you lose that first game back at home. So that's why Scotty had us prepared. By skating us, he had us prepared for that first game back home.
Yvon Cornway, how about you on that?
Well, I think Larry's got a lot of experience behind the bench, but, to win, you need everybody. You need the coach, you need the organization, you need the player. And I remember in '67, we lost against Toronto. And we did respect them, and because they were older than us, and we thought we were going to win easy. But that was they win the Stanley Cup against us. And after that, I think we had to respect the other team. And that's why Scotty was able to show us to respect the other team, and that's the only way you can win.
Serge Savard, Could anybody have coached all those teams to Stanley Cups in the 70s?
Well, I think Scotty was the best coach of his time by a country mile. I was lucky. I had him in juniors, and it's true we had a good team, but Scotty made the team better, and personally, he made a better player of me. So all his record, he won the Stanley Cup anywhere he won. And all his record was not sent by mail. He earned it. He was the first guy I remember when we came back from Russia in 1972, he was the first guy to find a way, how can we do things different? How can we practice different? And he was a great student of the game, and he made us all better.
Ken Dryden, you and Scotty just collaborated on a book. And in that book, you had some things to say about him that were difficult. How integral was he to all those championships in the 1970s?
I think it's as everybody has said. I mean, that we had strength everywhere. We had the best players. We had the best general manager. We had the best coach. We had the best arena. We had the fans that were the most passionate. You put all of those things together, and it makes you really, really tough to beat. And Scotty was relentless. I mean, and he had the kind of bearing about him that he didn't have to say, something all that often, but you knew what he was thinking. And he knew what he had. He knew what we were. And essentially, I think what he was saying to us is that you have no right not to be what you are. If you're as good as this, you've got to be as good as this and play that way. And that means tonight, but it means tomorrow night. It means against the Bruins and the Flyers, but it also means the same against teams that are at the bottom of the league. I mean, that great teams are going to lose. But I mean, great teams, they don't lose only 8 games during a year, or 10 games, or 12 games, or only 3 over 4 Stanley Cup finals. I mean, you've got to have not only the best everywhere, but you've got to have people who are relentless and who absolutely can't stand losing and totally love winning. And Scotty was absolutely the right person for those teams.
Okay, Scotty, you've heard what your guys have had to say. Your turn now.
Well, I mean, obviously, the one thing a coach has to do continuously is to get away from the individual accomplishments of players, even though it's so different now. But the players, they have to perform. And I think as a coach, you stress from the day when I was fortunate in one way. I was a junior hockey player, and when you're a junior hockey player back in those days, you don't figure out who you're going to be. You're hoping that you could be a player. I mean, it wasn't automatic. And then I couldn't play anymore, so I got coaching at a young age. And I never worried about being a young coach. I started when I was in the 20s. I had coaching a junior team, and then I got into the NHL when I was in my early 30s. But I always tried to stress the most important thing is the ability for the team to win. And never worrying about All-Star, never worrying about trophies. They have to come after the last trophy, which is the Stanley Cup. And and that's the thing a coach has to do. And there's some tough decisions some nights because you have to figure who's going tonight. And sometimes you need players to play more, and sometimes you need players to play less. And I always felt that we had a lot of great players, and there was sometimes tough decisions. I mean, I think the one I would like to mention the most was the last cup we won in Montreal, and we were in the conference final against Boston. That's the famous game where they had too many men on the ice, and I think it was Larry went back and gave it to Jacques Lemaire, and then Guy Lafleur scored the tying goal, and we won it in overtime with Yvan Lambert. And when I think about that game and everything else, we lost Guy Lapointe about halfway through the third period. We were down a couple of goals, and he got injured, couldn't come back in the overtime. And you talk about the closest we ever came to losing. We're in overtime. We'd won the 3 cups in a row. Now we're not in the finals. We're in the conference finals. And Claude Ruel always came down and talked to me and you don't say anything when you go into overtime. I mean, we were elated that we could tie the game with a minute to go on a great shot by Guy, and then about 10 minutes between the overtime. And I said to Claude, I said, Claude, we've lost Guy, but I'm gonna play the best guys I can. If we're gonna win, we're gonna win with the best guys. If we're gonna lose, it's gonna be them. I'm not gonna take any chances. We had 3 or 4 other defensemen that hadn't played a lot, and so I said to him, I said, I'm gonna start Larry and Serge, and he said, well, who's gonna be next? I said, no, one of them has to stay on. Hope one of them has to stay on, and then we'll always have one of those 2 guys on the ice. And fortunately, I thought about it, and I said, let's not think about playing 20 minutes. I mean, I just said play every shift, and we were lucky because we scored with 10 minutes gone in the period.
And what happened when somebody came to you and said, I'm complaining because I'm not getting enough ice time? How did you handle that?
They're not going to. Well, no, I think you have to explain. I mean, in a situation like that, it's not going to happen. But I think it's wise when you're not. I mean, you've got to have a communication, and I think the door has to be open. But at the same time, you have to make sure that you are the one that's setting the table. And I always tried to find as much as I could of the other teams, as much as I could. I mean, we had television too, but it's a lot different now. They get more kinds of stats, and I guess they go crazy with all the analytics. But no, I think a coach has to stress that the team has to win and not individuals. And you can't cater to one individual over another. You can play them. Everybody's not going to play the same. So the only differential is the players that are going on the ice. I was watching the game last night with the Islanders, and they beat Boston. Boston was kind of handicapped a bit. But when the game was over, that really good young player for the Islanders, he's an offensive player, Barzal. And
Barzal, yeah.
And they played him 10 minutes in the game. They played him because they had the lead. They played him three and a half minutes in the first period and about 4 in the second. In the third period, they played him a little less than 3 minutes. I'm sure down deep he may not have been that happy, but he didn't show it. And the coach, like he's been around a long time. I coached against Barry Trotz when he started in Nashville. That's how long he's been coaching. But that's a tough decision to make. And as long as the players know, if the coach is stressing, I got to win this game, that's the most important thing. And he chose, I mean, you could be wrong. He chose not to play him as much as he wanted to. And here they are. They're now going to beat they're in the last 4 teams.
Well, let me ask you, Vaughn, about this. How much policing did you players yourselves do if somebody got out of line and said, I'm not happy about the way things are going here?
I just have to change team. If he's not happy, you have to be happy when you play on the Montreal Canadiens. You know, I remember when I was junior, I was watching that team practice at the Forum. I arrived at the Forum, I was 17 years old. And I retired at 35 at the Forum. And I was watching the Montreal Canadiens practice. And, you know, when you go in the room and when you're young, you have to keep winning. They show you how to win. And I think Scotty showed that to us. He showed us how to win. And we had to keep the team winning. So I think we did our best. I don't know if I answered that question right, but
Serge, let me ask you, there are coaches who are considered players' coaches, meaning they like to be emotionally close to their players and very involved with their players. And then there are other coaches who can be quite cruel to their players. Where was Scotty on that continuum?
Well, I don't think he had favorites. Like I know what you mean, and I won't mention any names, but there's. I was talking to a guy from another team, and he says, "Well, on our team, it's not like your team. On our team, there's 2 guys that decide what we got to do. It's not the coach. We got to practice today. One guy was one of the 2 guys were deciding. Those 2 guys were deciding whether the team was going to practice today." And I remember when Don Horry came in Montreal for a year, and I was with him one night, and I says, "Why? Could you explain why, with the team you had in Boston, with Phil and Bobby and all those guys, how come you won only 2 Stanley Cup?" And he says, "I'm going to tell you why." He says, "You guys practice harder than we play during games." That's exactly the word he told me. So no, Scotty was fair, and like he said, the last game against Boston, I say he had to put the top player on the ice, and that's all right. And there's a lot of players that don't like that, and even especially when the guy's getting older and he's not playing as much as before, or he's not on the power play like he used to be, he won't be happy. But you have to deal with that on the team. You have to deal with that if you have a good team, a good coach, a good captain. It's all those things that you have to deal with.
Larry, what was your view on whether you thought Scotty was more of a player's coach or more of a tough, hard-nosed coach?
I think he was a little bit of both. I mean, nobody says as a coach you have to be all the players have to be your best friend. As Scotty says, you got to make tough decisions, and I think for me that was the hardest part when I went from being a player to a coach, is that you have to make those decisions, and sometimes you're going to hurt somebody's feelings, and not everybody's going to be happy. But I think Scotty had a really good feel for who he had to keep happy at the right time, and then who he could, pardon the expression, piss off and skate them to get them ready for when he needed them. And so that's what I think where Scotty was good at it, is that he had a good handle at how to keep track of his personnel and who he needed and when he needed them and how much he needed them. But I think his greatest attribute was behind the bench. I don't think in all my years of being involved in hockey, I've seen anybody that could handle a bench as well as Scotty could.
Scotty, I want to ask you about a moment that happened after you won your first Stanley Cup. And Ken writes about this in the book, and I've actually asked him about it on the TVO program that I do, because there was a moment apparently in the season where you went up to Ken and said to him, "Do you think you're too good for this team?" And it got the two of you in a bit of a sticky situation. And then after you won that cup, Ken writes in the book that you went up to him and you hugged him, and he did not hug you back because he was still a little, if you'll forgive the expression, Mr. Robinson, a little pissed off at you. Did you notice that at the time?
I'm sure it's the only guy that Scotty kissed. That's the only player that Scotty kissed in his life.
I didn't recall. No, I didn't recall that. But the toughest call I ever had to make as a coach, and a couple of the guys would have remembered, I'm sure. But and I'm not sure it was the second to last year, but we had a really good minor league team in Halifax, and Al Mcneal was the coach for a long time. They won 2 or 3 cups, developed Larry, developed a lot, Bill Nyrop, a lot of good players. And the one player they developed one year, I think he won the scoring in the American League, Pierre Mondew. And he was, I don't think he was an early draft pick, but mid-round. And Pierre burned up the American League, came to our training camp. And it's got to be after, right around the middle of winning all those cups. And he had a terrific training camp, and we always had a lot of players. I mean, Steve will tell you. It's too bad he wasn't on the call. The first year that Steve joined our team, and I don't know how it happened, but Sam never sent first early picks down to the minors. Some teams did, but I don't know what the reason was. A lot of them were Alan Eagleson clients. I have no idea. But Steve starts with us, and we had a pretty good team, and he's not playing very much. In fact, he did. If you look at Steve and Bob Gainey, they were drafted 72, 73, and the next year they traveled with our team, but we had so many players. Mark Napier was another one. So anyways, Pierre Mondew, he's at training camp, and we got too many players again, opening night. So I always talk to Claude, and I said, Claude, I'm not going to play Yvon Lambert tonight. He has not had a good camp. I'm sorry, he's not in the best shape he should be in. Pierre Mondew has to play. He's the best player in our training camp. And, oh no, he said, Scotty, he said, I'm worried about it. And he said, I'm worried because he's a very popular player on the team. Serge and Guy Lapointe and Guy, everybody knows how important he is. So I said, there's nothing we can do because what I had done, Eddie had put the names on the board of who was dressing, and we had this discussion with Claude, and I had put the names on the board, and Yvon's name wasn't there. So 4 or 5 of the guys, I remember Serge was one, and Guy Lapointe, and Bob Gainey, and Pete Mahovlich was on the team too, because he came in, and they said, it's opening night. He's got to play. You got to play Lambert. And they left in a huff for sure. And Claude turned to me, and he was so good. And it is in his broken English, like he said, Scotty, what do we do now? I said, nothing. I said, we can't change, Claude. and I said, it was about 10 to 11. I said, tell Eddie nobody goes on the ice. Don't let anybody go on the ice. And let's go and we'll have a meeting. And so we were going in, and Claude was behind me, and he said, you don't want me to be there, do you? I said, sure, I'd want you to be there. And I said to the team, unfortunately, I shouldn't have done this, but I said, we had to have a tough decision to make because we got 18 players ready to go, and we got 17 uniforms. So I said, the only way we can solve it is we need a volunteer. And you know how many volunteers we got? None. And that's things that coach, sometimes you have to do things, and they're not easy. They're tough calls. I mean, would I do it over again? Probably not, knowing how important it is, opening night, banner raising and everything else. But 2 or 3 years or 2 years later, Lambert scored one of the biggest goals of that 4-year run when he scored the overtime goal to knock out Boston.
Did Lambert play the second game?
Oh, he played right away. Yeah, right away.
Yeah.
But I mean, Yvon was an important part of our team. He was a player that made the league. I think they got him from Detroit. I'm not sure of that, but he played somewhere, not even in the NHL. But he did his job he played in the American League. Good solid player, and had a wonderful career with us.
He told me he was very upset when they trade him in Montreal. He says, geez, with that lineup, I'll never make the National Hockey League now. He says, I have a good chance in Detroit, but I'll never make it in Montreal. But he scored 50 goals in the minors. He was a pretty good player.
Serge, I remember when we would be playing Detroit and before the game, and in every time, right before we would go on the ice, you would say, hey, Lambert, they traded you, Lambert. Get mad, Lambert. Get mad, Lambert. They didn't want you. They didn't like you, Lambert.
Hey, Ken, while you have the floor, can I get you to weigh in on the nature of your relationship with Scotty back in the day? Because you're very candid in the book about some of the difficulties that the two of you had during the 1970s.
Well, I think that was the only time that I mean, there was one other time when Scotty didn't play me in the opening game of a season. And it was the opener in Montreal, and it was against LA. And Bunny always played against LA. And I went into Scotty and I said, Scotty, what's going on? And he said, well, Bunny always plays against LA. And I said, Scotty, it's the opening game of the season. I mean, that's what matters. It doesn't matter who the opponent was. But no, I mean, the thing that just a couple of things. One in terms of, as you were saying, that, the distinction of players, coach, and the other is that you usually think of a player's coach as somebody who is arm around the shoulder, buddy, all of that. That was not Scotty. But I think the ultimate player's coach is the coach who understands what the player really needs most of all. And we all like to have the arm around the shoulder. We all like to, have the nice word here and there. But what Scotty understood about all of us is that what we wanted more than anything was to win. That was, that arm around the shoulder or whatever, we wanted more than anything to win. And we understood that, with him behind the bench, that no favorite, no any of this sort of stuff, that the decisions that he was making, even if at times we didn't agree with them, they were always made us understanding that they would give us a better chance to win. And that, I think, is the ultimate, player's coach. Insofar as how he would coach me, the best thing that for me was that, as everybody is saying about all of us, we hated to lose, and I hated to lose. I felt humiliated when we lost, And when when you lose and you're a goalie and there are two goalies on the team, that's the almost automatic moment that the change is made. You put in the other guy to play. I mean, that's understood. And what would happen to me after a loss is that I would feel so mad and embarrassed that I would just stay at home. I'd have to show up for practice, then I'd go back home again, and I would just stir and stew until I got the next chance. Well, Scotty somehow understood that when that after a bad game, that I was almost sure to play a good game. And so instead of making the shift as he would be expected to make, he didn't. He would put me back in the next night. And that was really, really important for me.
Wonderful story. I'm sorry that. Sorry, go ahead, Scotty.
I wanted to mention something about Ken. See, when you look at the record, when Ken was playing in the league, some teams played the goalie nearly every game, but Bunny Lorac was a first-round draft pick in the 72 or 70. I think it was there after Steve. But one year, what happened is I always wanted Bunny to play at least 20 games, and that's what happened. If you look at their records, Ken used to play in the high 50s, maybe 60, and it averaged probably about 20 games he didn't play. And one year we were playing, was it probably in March at least, maybe February, and looking for games for Bunny to get into. He started to play at home, and he played for every third game or fourth game he'd be playing, and it happened to be a home game. And we're naturally not losing many of those games at all. His record would be excellent, but Ken mentioned to me, he said, I'm getting anxious because the playoffs are coming up, and if I'm going to play, he didn't say he's going to. He said, if I'm going to play in the playoffs, I haven't played in Montreal for 5 weeks. The way it's, and I had to say, well, we don't play every game, and I guess the rotation. Bunny, it was his turn, so I put him in. But I'm glad he mentioned it because we were getting into the playoffs in about 3 weeks. But it's another thing. Ken wasn't happy, not with me as much as thinking if I'm going to play in the playoffs, I better get used to playing a few games at home.
Ken, do you remember that exchange?
Yeah, no, I don't remember that part of it. I mean, really, that Bunny was a good goalie, and Bunny deserved to play. But when you are a goalie on a team, it is very much like being a pitcher in baseball. That you're as a pitcher, you're one of 9 on the team, and as a goalie, you're one of 6 on the ice, and one of 19 in the game. But you take each game really personally, and the team wins and loses, but you also take it as if you're winning and losing. And the hardest times I had were when I would be when you would be playing only here and there at certain moments. You just felt you didn't feel the kind of responsibility that you wanted to have. You wanted to feel like a person that helped deliver the game. That's a goalie's job to feel that way, and it's everybody else's job to feel that way too. But just by the nature of the position, you really do kind of feel that way. And if you don't play almost every game, you don't feel the way you need to feel in order to be a goalie and to kind of just feel like you're delivering the night.
Understood. I feel bad that Steve Shutt and the technology, for whatever reason, has prevented him from rejoining us. But I would like to show some of his work because, and then I'm going to ask Yvonne how this happened. Glenn, let's go to clip number 38 here. Here's some of Steve Shutt back in the day. And once we get this clip up, I'm going to ask Yvonne how anybody who had to put up with all of this stuff managed to get 60 goals in a season. You know, all of the stuff that we're about to see here would be called for penalties back then, and would be called for penalties today. Of course, it wasn't called back then. Yvonne, how did you guys score so many goals with all the clutching and grabbing and hooking and tackling and all of that business that went on?
Well, I think you have to be quick. no choice about it. I think Steve goes a lot in front of the net, and he scores 60 goals, so it's not fluke. He's a little bit like Cole Caulfield from the Montreal Canadiens, the rookie who just came, and I think he's got a little bit the same style, the same shot, the same size, but I think Steve goes more in front of the net than Cole Caulfield. So. But they look similar for me. But Steve was like a rebound or go in front of the net and just touch the puck a little bit in the air. And hey, we'll have no choice. We have to skate and do our job, and that's the only way we're going to stay in the league.
Serge, I wonder if you preferred the game the way it was played back then, with all of the hooking and clutching and grabbing that was allowed, or would you have preferred to play under today's rules where they don't allow any of that?
I think I would prefer to play today's rules. I never liked the grabbing and the hooking, and I remember Tiger William one night. He was holding Guy Lafleur for 200 feet all the way to the other zone, you know, and without a penalty. I couldn't believe that. But today it's a different game. No red line. And back on Steve Shutt, you were talking about Steve Shutt. It's too bad he's not here, but we used to call him the garbage can. and Steve Shutt, you know, he happened to had he had Guy Lafleur on the right side, and I'd never seen a guy with so much timing to take the rebound. You know, and there was a lot of rebound because on the right side the puck was coming pretty quick, and you got to have great hands and a lot of talent to score 60 goals.
Serge, we just saw some video of what Danny Gallivan called your patented Savardian spinorama. Where did you get the idea to do that?
I first of all, Doug Harvey. I saw it from Doug Harvey. Doug Harvey was doing that a lot, and but you know, at one point of time, it became natural for me to do that. I was not even thinking when somebody was coming close to me, and I was. You know, and it works almost 100% of the time.
Larry, how about it? The rules back then versus the rules today. Which system would you prefer to play under?
Well, the only comment I'll make is that a few of the guys, when I was working with St. Louis during our Stanley Cup, when we were going for the Stanley Cup in St. Louis, they saw some of the old games that I had played. And all they said was, man, they said, if you played like that nowadays, you'd be in the penalty box 90% of the time. And it's so true because, I mean, that's the way it was. And now it's unbelievable. It was nothing to be skating up the ice and having one guy holding an arm and then somebody else hooking you and what have you. And the fact that with no red line, I mean, that makes it doubly hard for a defenseman as well. So,
that's why Larry.
I think I preferred the hockey when I played, but it would.
Yeah, I was just mentioning that's why
what?
That's why the you know, those rules were all in the rule book. You weren't allowed to hook, but they just didn't call it. And as a manager, every Monday morning we receive notes from the league. The interpretation of the rules was not. They didn't apply the rules. It was always an interpretation of the rules.
Serge, you looked like you just gave Phil Esposito a pretty good hook there.
Sure, not a hook. It just prevent him from going forward.
Well,
that was allowed. That was allowed.
Yeah. It's nighttime in Florida. Everybody's on their computers, I guess.
That's it. Everybody's watching Netflix.
One question I have for the goalie. Why do you think about a guy who goes in front of the net and nobody could touch him, and he tried to block the view from the goalie in front of the net? I hate that rule so much, and every time I look at it, I throw up. Because, we used to go in the net, and one year I asked the coach to break. I said, put Fergie with me, for Christ's sake. By the time I touch the puck, I got to get up 2 or 3 times in front of the net. So now if you don't touch him and the goalie's got a view blocked, what kind of rule is that if no interference?
I know. Yeah.
Just one of the things about Steve, and if Steve was on the call, well, 2 things. One that I don't know if you all remember, before certain games, again after the warm up and before we go on the ice.
Yeah.
And Guy Lafleur would do something odd and weird, and everybody would laugh, and everybody would then look over at Shutty and say, "Shutty, what do you think?" And he'd say, "That's great. I like it when Guy is ready, but not too ready. There'll be rebounds tonight." and that was, that if Lafleur was too ready, then he'd score on his own. If he wasn't quite ready, then Shutty would get the rebound. But the thing with Steve in his hands, there was a game in Yaroslavl in Russia about 5 or 6 years ago, and it was a year after the plane had crashed, killing the players on the Yaroslavl team, and there was a commemorative game, and there were all kinds of players from the Russian teams as well as from Canadian teams. Gretzky played, Messier played, a lot of Russian players who had recently retired, McGillney, players like that, and Shutty played. And Shutty, I think, was 60 years old at the time. And it was a game that I think it ended up 6-4 or something like that. He got 2 goals. And the 2 goals he scored were absolutely Steve Shutt, timeless goals. He was in front of the net. He tipped one shot. He got a rebound and another. And he looked as if he was 25 years old making those plays. It was unbelievable.
Well, gentlemen, we're in the home stretch here, and I guess we should really wrap up with this, I think, reasonable question. And that is, we've heard Stan Fischler on this Hockey Time Machine say he thinks the Islanders of the 1980s were the greatest team of all time. We've heard other people say that the Gretzky-Messier Oilers were the greatest team of all time. Maybe Scotty's Red Wings are going to get some votes on that. Maybe Toe Blake's 1950s Montreal Canadiens, which won 5 in a row. And then there's your club as well. I'd like to find out from all of you who you thought the greatest team of all time was. Larry Robinson, start us off.
Well, I think the 76 team that we had is as good a team as I've ever played on, the one that won 4. I think that we could have played against and beat any team that of the other teams that you mentioned, even the Oilers, because I think we had more depth than maybe some of the other teams. But you can't take anything. Those were you're talking about 4 different eras. So that's not to take anything away from those other teams. Those other teams were great. I think the one that was as close to us in the 70s was the Islanders team, because they had a very similar makeup of that team with Dennis Potvin, Bossy, and those guys. But I still think we were one of the best teams. But Stan's going to say that anyway because he's from New York.
Yvon Cormier, qu'est-ce que vous dites?
It's not only one season we lost 10 games and 8 games. It's 2 seasons. And then we went in the playoff too. So, and don't forget that there was no overtime. And that was a regular schedule in the game. You had to win or you were lose. You cannot come back and score in overtime to win the game. So, like Larry said, I think respect all the other team. I know we lost against Toronto in 67. We did respect them. And I think Islanders, like Larry said, to win 4 Stanley Cup in a row, you have to be good.
Sarah Savard, what do you say?
Well, I mentioned that before. I agree what I read in Scotty's book, but it's funny. There's different times, and if you in those days, if you asked Red Fisher was the best team, you would say the Montreal Canadiens in the '50s. And if you had but I'll go with Scotty. So. I think we were, if you lose 8 games one year, 10 the other one, and 12, 30 games in 3 years, I think we probably were the best team.
Ken, how about you?
Well, that's why I asked Scotty to do what he did. I mean, the thing that, that all of us have our opinions, and I can't think of anybody, and I don't think there is anybody who has been around the best in hockey for as long as Scotty. And as we talked about and as I wrote about, I mean, Scotty started watching the Montreal Canadiens and the rest of the league up close by 1948. I mean, as he got his standing room pass to watch the games of the Montreal Canadiens and could go every Saturday night, and he could watch the best teams of that time, the Leafs as they were finishing winning cups in the 40s. The Detroit team was about to create their great teams in the late 40s and early 50s. And then watching up close the Canadiens winning 5 in a row in the 50s, watching the Leafs in the 60s, watching the Bruins, watching us, coaching and managing against the Islanders and against the Oilers, coaching the Detroit Red Wings, coaching the Pittsburgh Penguins, having a significant role with the Blackhawks when they were winning their cups. It's like, and so not only being there, not only being alive during that time, but being absolutely up close to see it all. And so that's why I asked him, pick your top 8, whatever your 8 are. These are not my 8; these are your 8, and then have them play against each other. I don't want to just hear that this guy's great, that team's great, everybody's great. Somebody's greater than somebody else. Somebody, that Gordie Howe didn't play a great game every night. He had some bad nights. Bobby Orr had some bad nights. How do you create a bad night for Gordie Howe or a less good night? What do you do in these situations? And so, in the end, I mean, yes, I have my opinion and but I couldn't think of anybody who would have a more informed opinion than Scotty. And so it wasn't just the opinion, it was the why. Don't just tell me that this team is better than the other. Tell me why, demonstrate to me why, tell me how they would beat these other teams. And so as Sir said, I'm going with Scotty too.
Scotty, you get the last word on this. Ken, of course, is talking about the book that you two did together. And that is the last part of the book where you lay it all on the line and you make your choice. So tell us.
Well, I think you have to go on the performance of the team. And when you analyze the 76-77 team, a lot of the players were there the year before and the year after. But when you think 3 Hall of Fame defensemen on the same team, and they scored 62 goals, our defense, in 80 games, 62, no overtime. Guy got 28, Larry got 19, Serge got 11, and some of the other guys got 3 or 4, 5. Over 60 goals from the defense. The differential on the goals for and goals against was 216 in 80 games, the spread. The highest scoring team by a long shot and the least goals against by a long shot. So I don't know how you go against, and then 2 losses in the playoffs. So when you think about it, it's like 10 losses, 1 loss at home on October the 30th against Boston. The team went nearly 60 days without losing a game from sometime in January to in March. So I don't know how you you can't measure. And the record of 132 points, even though now it's 82 games and they have shootouts and they have overtime, and it's still the record. I mean, you're talking now, what, 34 years ago. So I don't know how you can go against that. I really don't. I agree. The Islanders and the Oilers had great runs, but they never had the wins and losses. I mean, it's like Ken's record. I mean, whether you like it or not, he played 7 regular seasons and he lost 57 games. So he would lose 8 games a season, 8 regular losses out of 50, 60 games. I mean, you just can't go against. I don't think you can go against the stats.
Glenn, I'm going to ask you, if you would, to bring up the slide, because the book that we have just discussed, as well as a couple of others, are certainly worth your time if you're watching this tonight. Scotty, A Hockey Life Like No Other by Ken Dryden. Larry Robinson's book, The Great Defender, My Hockey Odyssey, that he did with Kevin Shea. And Serge Savard's Forever Canadien. 3 books worth your time. And I guess I'll just finally ask all of you what you're up to these days. Serge Savard, what do you do with your time these days?
Well, I'm trying to play golf as much as I can. So, I'm still active a little bit because I'm part owner of a real estate firm. So I keep busy.
Yvan?
Well, I'm still an ambassador for the Montreal Canadiens. I've been to the Bell Center and the Forum. This is my second house, I think. I always do. And, the best thing is to stay healthy. I have a back problem lately, and I cannot play golf now for last June. I got 4 back surgery. And but, I'm not bad. It's just a back sore. And I got an injection last week. Now I feel not bad. So just stay healthy, guys. The miserable thing.
Very good. Larry Robinson, I think you just had a pretty big birthday, did you not?
Oh yeah, please don't remind me. I finally reached puberty. So
you turned 70 a week ago.
This is the first year that I haven't really been involved much in hockey. I still talked a little bit with the guys in St. Louis, and I call Mike Van Ryan and Steve Ott and also Chief down there when just to catch up and offer some of my ideas of what they're doing right or doing wrong. But this is really my first year of retirement. I just moved about a month, almost a month now. I just moved into a new house up in a retirement community in northern Florida, in a place called the Villages. So I'm going to be like Serge. I'm going to play a little bit of golf and relax and enjoy myself.
Terrific. Ken Dryden?
Well, I'm working on a couple of books, and which I enjoy doing a lot. And one that's pretty much done. It'll take another year or 2 to do, and do some work with Mcneal, and otherwise just try to do some interesting things.
Great. Coach, I cannot believe it. Are you 87 years old?
Not really.
Scotty?
Yeah, I am. I'm 87. I'll be 88 in September.
Your birthday is the same as Daryl Sittler's and my brother's and Ralph Backstrom's. September 18th, you're going to turn 88 years old. That's astonishing.
Wow. You look great, huh?
He sure does.
I try to keep busy. Just got back here about 2 months ago in a suburb of Buffalo, and I've been really busy watching all the games. I can't watch enough of them, but I'm a little more excited now that you're with a lot of different teams, and it's so hard for teams to stay up now. And to see Montreal, beat Toronto, and when you're from Montreal, you're always from Montreal, and especially beating Toronto, and then beating Winnipeg so handily. I'm kind of anxious to see what happens from now on, because I watched a lot of hockey, and this Avalanche team and the Vegas team, boy, they tied for the most points in the league. They got nearly everything going for them, and they got the 6th game in an hour or so. So it's going to be a great for. I'm watching Canadiens because I'm just wondering the magic they had in the last 2 series, and I've seen it happen before. How they're going to, I got a lot of friends in Montreal still, and in fact, I keep in touch with a lot of them, and I feel pretty good today because I don't know if you guys know, but I knew this guy in the 70s, and I kept friends of him. Joe Marino owns St. Viator Bagels, and he sends me 6 dozen bagels every couple of months, and I ship them to all my kids and all over the place. I miss traveling. Hopefully we're going to be traveling now, but they're all coming to Buffalo in the next month or so. We haven't seen our kids like you have for 2 years now, so looking forward to that.
Wonderful. Ken Dryden, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you the last question of the night, which is, you played for the Canadiens, but you ran the Leafs. Who were you cheering for in that first series?
Well, you always, you always feel the closest to the team that you played with, as opposed to worked for. I mean, I loved working with the Leafs. When I was with the Leafs, the team I wanted to beat the most was the Canadiens. But there is nothing like being on the ice. It is not like being up in the press box and watching. And so when it gets down to it, when it's a crunch moment, when you get revealed as to whether, who you hope for, it is go Habs go.
Okay. Gentlemen, this was truly an extraordinary night. We usually at this point invite Laura and Paul and Glenn to come on and just finish things off. So I will happily pass the baton to them. Laura, if you could open up the StreamYard, there we go. And usually Paul gets the first word, and then Laura, maybe Glenn gets the next word, and Laura gets the last word. So Paul, where's Paul Patsko?
We can't fit him in.
Okay. All right.
I'm sorry.
He's with Shuddy.
He's with Shuddy. There we go. Glenn, why don't you...
Paul is watching on YouTube.
Okay, Glenn, why don't you take the first word, and then we'll give Laura the last word.
All I want to say is a thank you to Scotty Bowman, because a few weeks ago we were doing a hockey card show, and I was the host of that show. And unbeknownst to us, Scotty was handling a family emergency, and he was on the phone. And even though he was on the phone with this other person, he was so incredibly gracious to talk to me, somebody he'd never met before and never talked to before, and even to talk and reference me by name, which was an incredible thrill. And whatever awful things all the players think about Scotty, I want to tell you that they're probably all true. But as far as I'm concerned, he is a terrific gentleman, even to people he doesn't have to be nice to. And I will always take with me how gracious he was, even in a difficult circumstance. And I praised him to the point where he actually left. So I'll stop talking.
Okay, Laura, over to you.
I just wanted to say from Suzanne Primo, she is saying a warm hello to Ken Dryden.
Gentleman Joe's
Ron,
granddaughter.
Yes, and Ron Andruff is enjoying the walk down memory lane. So it sounded like everybody here had a great time. We really appreciate your time tonight. I'm sorry that I couldn't get Shuddy in. We kept trying, and his internet has got some issues the last couple of days, so that's the way it goes. But we hope to have him back another
he
day.
lives in the cheap. He lives in the cheap part of Florida.
Laura, may I have one word here just before you close it off?
Go ahead.
Scotty Bowman will not remember this, but in the when he was running the Pittsburgh Penguins, my dad and I and a couple of other buddies were down in Pittsburgh on a baseball road trip, and it happened to be at the time when the Penguins were in the Final Four. And we went by the igloo, and my dad saw Scotty, and he rolled down his car window, and just for fun, he said, "Hey, Scotty, there's a bunch of us here from Hamilton, Ontario, who've come down to see the Penguins play. You got any tickets?" And Scotty said to this guy he didn't know at all, "Come to the arena tomorrow morning, and I'll set you up." And we went to the arena the next morning, and there he was waiting for us at the box office, and we got our 4 tickets, and we went to the game, and Jaromir Jagr scored in overtime. It was an utterly memorable game. This is another indication of what kind of man this guy is. So, Scotty, you don't even remember that, I'm sure, but it was almost 30 years ago, and I've never forgotten it, and thank you for doing that.
I'm on now.
Thank you.
And there's Paul.
Yeah, thanks to everybody. And Serge won't remember this, but I sat with you at a card show about 20 years ago, and you challenged me on all the different pictures and who they were, and I only missed one, and that was Before that you got. And I remember, and the other fellow signing was Rocket Richard, and at the end of it, he was pretty tired. He stayed longer than he should have. You snuck behind the line with a picture, just as a joke, and he took that and he threw it on the floor and showed Richard temper, and you were playing a joke on it. That was a wonderful time. So that's how I remember you 20 years ago. Okay.
Wonderful. Laura, wrap it up for us if you would.
Perfect. We'd like to thank Glenn for all of his hard work every week. Oh, and Paul for putting all the videos and everything together so we could do this, and for Steve's hard work on getting all the interview questions and all his time today, and really appreciate it. If you liked our program, could you please press the like button down below? Also, if you press subscribe and click the little button, it'll let you know every time that we go live. So thank you very much on behalf of Glenn, Paul, and myself, and Steve, and have a good night.
Merci beaucoup, tout le monde. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Great.